Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over a series of Microsoft.com presentations on getting started with ASP.NET MVC5. So far I've done the getting started and the adding a controller modules. So I've done the first 2 out of 11. And we're up to the third, which is adding a view. Alright. And as the author says here, in this section we're going to modify the Hello World controller class to add a view template, to use view template files to cleanly encapsulate the process of generating responses to a client. Think, if you would please, about what that means. Previously, in the adding a controller section that we just finished, we actually put the HTML right into the controller file itself. But now what it says is we're going to have that separation of concerns. In other words, the output that we're sending back to the user should go into view files, and that's what we're going to do. It says you'll create a view template using the Razor View Engine. I'm not going to click on this, but if you wanted a little bit more of a primer on Razor than what you get in this particular presentation, you could click that hyperlink. What Razor does is it allows you to put C# right into your HTML files. It changes them then to a CS HTML file or a C# hypertext markup language file. As mentioned, it minimizes the number of characters and keystrokes required, and it enables a fast, fluid coding workflow. In a way, it goes against what we're talking about, which is that separation of concerns. You would think that what we would want, would be, instead of having an HTML file with C# in it, we'd want separate C# and HTML files. But that's not how it works here. So currently the index method returns a string with a message that's hard-coded. What does that mean? Let's take a look. Don't think we need our config anymore. All right. Now, I believe at least, well, let's see. Currently the index method, but they're not telling us if it's the index method, but I think it's the one for the hello world here. So it says currently this returns a string with a message that is hard-coded in the controller class. We want to change this back to more the way it looked originally. In fact, let's get rid of this. You saw why we were using that. Oh, I guess we're still running, so let's stop that. Now we'll remove that. And we're going to change this so it looks more like a, quote, typical or normal type of index. So instead of a string, we're going to return an action result. And here, instead of returning, because that'll give us an error because that's not an action result, we'll just return a view. Okay? So this index method will use a view template to generate an HTML response. All right. Most controller methods that have an index method will generally return an action result. So what do we want to do next? Well, we want to come in and we want to right mouse click. Notice in our views folder for Hello World, there's nothing in it. We've got something in account. We've got something in home. We've got something in manage. We've got something in shared. But our Hello World is empty. So we want to right mouse click on this. I'm sorry. Try it again. Right mouse click on Hello World. Choose Add. And then what we want, we could go right down here and choose MVC View Page with Layout Razor. So we could do that, or I believe we could also just click View here, which I believe at least is going to bring the same. Nope, it's not. All right, so let's do it the way they say it. So we're going to right mouse click on here, choose Add. Then we're going to go down and we are going to choose MVC View Page with Layout Razor right there. All right, and as you can see, we are asked then to specify a name. We are going to enter in here index. So this index is the index that will be called from here. All right, after we do that, we can either click Enter or choose OK. All right, and it says in the dialog above, it says the view shared is selected. If we had a custom layout, we could select it. We'll talk about that later on in the tutorial. All right, but I guess we are supposed to choose this one. If you had a custom layout file, you could select it. Okay. What's going to hopefully happen here is inside of views hello world, we're going to have an index.cshtml. There's currently nothing. We're clicking OK. There it is. And there it is. And there's really not very much in the file right now. All right, all it's telling us is that we are to use the shared layout, to use this in shared. There is a layout CSHTML. We are to use that one. That's all it's telling us right now. Well, we don't want to do that. We want to go back to our index. We don't need this layout CSHTML open right now, I don't believe. All right, so we are to come in here, and after this, it says add the following highlighted stuff. So let's go back and make sure we're doing it correctly. So we will go back to here. We did that. We chose what we were supposed to choose. We did index. We did this. We saw that we now had under hello world our index.cshtml. And they wanted us to add this stuff here. We already have this, so we're going to add this stuff. Copy. And down on the bottom, we're going to add those two. Now, would I be better off typing it in myself as opposed to copying it? Probably, to be honest with you. So we want to run this file. So we're just, rather than, first of all, let's save. Do a save all. But rather than running the program and going to hello world, which we can do, all right, let's instead just right mouse click on here and choose view in browser. And notice I'm running Chrome by default. And notice it's running hello world and index. There it is. Hello from our view template. What's so big about that? Well, notice that's this. All right. We could have also we could have come in here and run the program. And notice it's defaulting to hello world index. So it should look exactly the same as what we just saw, I believe at least. There it is. So, and there it is. It looks exactly the same because we're running the same file both times. All right, stop the run here. All right, so I just did this. And in fact, I did it both ways. It says here when you do that, it says you can also right-click and choose View in Page Inspector. If you want more about that, you can do this. Or as mentioned, we could just go to the hello world. So I did it both ways to show them both to you. The index method in the controller doesn't do much. It simply returns that view which says call the index.cshtml, which exists under the hello world folder in our views folder. So again, this is what we saw. And as the author says, looks pretty good. Notice that the title bar shows index myasp.net applet and a big link. Depending on how small you make the browser window, you might need to click the 3 bars to be able to see those. That's no big thing. Okay? I just want to go on. Changing views and layout pages. First, what we don't want in here anymore is when we run this, you've already seen it, but when we run this, and I'm going to remove this. Let's see, do we want this? We'll work okay from here. Yeah, we don't want that to say application name. It's common to every page, and really, it's all of that is set up. Let's look at where it's set up. So we're going to go back into Visual Studio here, stop our run. And we're going to go to our views shared folder right here, and we are going to open up our underscore layout. All right. And there it is, application name. This file is called a layout page, and it's in the shared folder so that it's able to be utilized from multiple different files. As mentioned in the handout here, and I'm going to go back to it, as mentioned, I'm going to keep bopping back and forth between these. Layout templates allow you to specify the HTML container layout of your site in one place and then apply it across multiple pages. All right, it says find the render body that's in there. Jump back, and where's render body? Right there. All right, it says that's a placeholder where all of the view-specific pages that we create show up. For example, it says if you select the About link, all right, then the about.cshtml view is what's going to be rendered in there. Okay, they want us to change, let's go back. Change the contents of the title element. Change the action link that's in there so that instead of saying application name, it says MVC movie. And change the controller from home to movies. So we want to change this line here is going to make all of our changes for us. Now, hopefully you figured out that after we do that, I think at least, we're going to run into a problem. All right, or we could potentially run into a problem. How's that? Actually, we won't. It's just going to change the name here to MVC movie. So let's copy this. Let's go back to our code, and we want to change this line right here and change it to this line. So now on every page, this should be our title. This is going to be what gets run. All right. Again, I'm trying to be complete here. I'm being more deliberate even than I usually am. The author says on our write-up before we go run this, the author says here, change the content, change the action link So it says MVC movie and the controller from home to movies. Okay, so there's the controller. Run the application and notice that it now says MVC movie up here. Click the About link and that should also say MVC movie. So let's go back to our code. Do a save all, which we should always be doing before we run. Run this. And notice it now says here MVC movie. Click on the About link. Notice when we click About that we're at home here and it says MVC movie. About, MVC movie, contact, MVC movie. We were able to make the change once in the layout template and have every other affected page show the change that's been made. All right. Let's close that and come back to here. All right. And the author says here, when we first created the index.cshtml file, it contained only this code. This is Razor code, just so you know. How do I know it's Razor code? It's Razor code because it starts with the @ So what we're saying is, okay, we're in this HTML file, we want to put C# into it. So the Razor code, as it says, it is explicitly setting the layout page. And that's what this did. Then we added more Razor code because it started with the @. Then we added just straight HTML. Nothing new there. Now it says you can use the layout property to set a different layout view or set it to null so nothing's used. That's this right here. We're telling it to use the common one. All right. It says now let's change the title of the index view, which right now is index. All right. So we are told here, I'm on the bottom of page 12 of the handout, and I'm right here. Okay. So we are told to come back into our code. We are told to go into our index.cshtml file, change the name of this from index to movie list, and the H2 from index to my movie list. And we are told that we don't have to change the hello here, hello from our view template. All right. So this code sets the title property to movie list. All right. Now that layout template that we are using, it's going to end up using the value in the title element as part of the head section. All right. And they show it in here someplace. In here. In fact, I think they want us to change this here, ViewBag title, from my ASP.NET application. They want us to change this to or just a movie app. Okay, and let's save all this. But before we run it again, we already are running, so let's stop the run and let's save it again. All right, but before we run it again, the author says here, run the application. Notice the browser title, the primary heading, and the secondary headings have all changed. It says if you don't see this, it may be running a cached or an earlier version of your program that was copied to the browser. So instead of doing an F5, do a Control F5, and that forces the browser to run the most up-to-date one. In fact, let's do it like that. So instead of an F5 here, let's hold down on the Control key and tap the F5 key. All right? And let's see what's changed. So up here it's got home page, movie app. So that's changed. All right? If I go to about, it's about movie app. That's changed. Contact movie app. That's changed. So we made those changes. So if we use this view bag, and the view bag is designed for small pieces of data, all right, you can easily use that to pass parameters between the view template and the layout template. Right. Now, I'm looking at something here, and what they have and what I have, well, we're at the home page, that's why. So let's come back in here and do our hello world. All right, that's thinking about it. There we go. There's our new My Movie list, and there's our hello from our view template. So we merged things from those two files, and now it says movie list, movie app. So that little bit of data, that hello from our view template message, was hard-coded. So far now, we so far have used the C for controller. We have also used now the V for view. We have not yet used the M for model, but I believe that'll be the next lesson, lesson 4, that we'll get to in a few minutes. All right, let's stop the run here. And let's stop the run here. Oh, we're not running it here. Good. All right, now let's get back to here. So you just saw this. All right, bottom of page 14, and this goes on. This particular lesson has got 18 pages in it. So we've got about 4 or 5 more pages to go. It says, before we go to a database and talk about models, let's first talk about passing information from the controller to the view. Controller classes are invoked in response to an incoming URL request. So in other words, the user comes in, keys in an address or a URL into their browser. That's what they're talking about. So as it says here, the controller class is where you write code that handles those requests. It also retrieves data from a database. How? By calling the appropriate model. And we'll get to that, start to get to that in the next chapter. And ultimately, it decides, so if I've got multiple different views, it decides which view to send back to the browser. View templates, as mentioned right there, can be used from a controller to generate and format a response to the browser. So the controller, I've mentioned this in earlier lectures. The controller acts, for lack of better words, kind of like a traffic cop. All right, it's responsible for providing the data or objects that are required for the view template to render a response to the browser. Notice the best practice that's in bold there. The view should do just that. There should never, ever be any logic, business logic in the view. The view should never, ever directly interact with a database. Now, is it possible to have code in the view? The answer is yes. What you'll see later is once we get a list of movies in here, we might want it to run through the equivalent of a for loop to show us all those. But by having the view just work on the data that's presented to the user via the controller, it allows us to maintain this separation of concerns that we talked about previously. All right. Currently it says the welcome action takes a name and a num times parameter and it outputs those values directly to the browser. Rather than having the controller render this, let's change the controller to use a view template instead. It will generate a dynamic response, which means that we need to pass appropriate bits of data. Think about what that means. We want it to be interactive. So for it to be interactive, we have to pass it information. All right? We could pass it different bits of information every time. That would generate a different dynamic response every time. So it says the view template will generate a dynamic response, meaning that we need to pass appropriate bits of data from the controller to the view to generate said response. You can do this by having the controller put the dynamic data that it needs in a view bag object. One thing is, don't get too hung up on this view bag. The view bag should again only be used for small bits of information. You wouldn't want to pass, if a person had everything they were working on in a shopping cart and they had scores and scores of items, you wouldn't want to put that and use that with a view bag. All right, so we're going to follow this right now. We are going to return to our hello world controller.cs file and change the welcome method so that it adds a message and a num times value to the view bag object. Again, notice what it says here. View bag is a dynamic object. You can put whatever you want in it, and it has no predefined properties and technically no predefined data type. Rather, the ASP.NET MVC model binding system automatically maps the name and the num times from the query string to parameters in the method. So it says here the complete hello world controller CS file will now look like this. So I'm going to grab everything inside of our public class hello world controller. I'm going to grab all of this and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. Then I'm going to go back into our code and go back into our hello world.cs file and grab all of this, paste that in. In fact, before I do that, I'm going to keep that line that's right there and then paste it in. All right. Just for completeness, I'm going to have that get, but that's not hello world. That's hello world. Welcome. All right. This is on the bottom of page 15 if you are following along on the handout. Now, as it says, the view bag object contains the data, the message, and the num times. Next, we'll need a welcome view template. So it says here what we should do is we should click, first let's save, then choose build and choose build solution. You want to do that because of the changes we made, and if we didn't, it may not work correctly. All right, now we want to go over to our hello world folder right here. We want to right mouse click on it, choose add, and again go down to MVC5 View Page with Layout Razor. Okay, we're asked for a name. The name we want here is welcome. and we click OK. In the layout, we'll accept our default, which is _layout. Remember, that's our shared file. All right. And we'll click OK. And that should click in here. That's the new one. Welcome.cshtml. All right. Hey, we're getting there. Now, we are asked to change our markup. It says replace the markup in this file. Okay, so in other words, I guess we don't use this. Instead, going back to the handout, we want to use this, which says using Razor code that our title is welcome, and we'll also have an H2 tag that says welcome. Then we're going to loop through this, and whatever we put in here for our message, all right, we're going to basically put it in that number of times. And if that confuses you, let's put in the code first and then run it. All right. So come back here, put in that code right there. All right. Now this is new. We have Razor code right inside of an unordered list. We're telling it to go through the number of times that we put in there. All right. And we're telling it to give us a message. What message? I'm going to show you that in just a minute. All right. So we're going to save this and we're going to run this. You won't see any magic, so to speak, when we first do this because we haven't done anything new yet. Plus, oh, I guess we will because we are running the welcome page. All right. Okay, so far it doesn't look like much, but we want to come in here and we've added welcome. That's been the parameter. Question mark, name equal, I'll put Jeff in there. Jeff, ampersand, num times, equal 10. Hit enter. Notice what I have. All right. What we did was we used the viewBag object to pass data from our controller to our view. Later on, in a later tutorial, we'll use a view model to pass data from a controller to a view. The view model approach is considered preferred over the viewBag approach. All right, so we're starting slow. The author also mentions in here, we're at the end of the lesson here, but the author also mentions, says, see the blog entry of dynamic versus strongly typed views. All right, again, just another thing that's in there. This was a kind of M for model, but not the database kind. So in the next lesson, in lesson 4, what we are going to do in lesson 4 is we are going to, as you see, add a model. All right? It's a shorter lesson. It's only 6 pages. In fact, the next 2 lessons are both short. All right? So I'm planning on doing both of those in just a few minutes. So I'll be back with the adding a model shortly.